what I really like to talk about in the main today, thing I think brought you here, and that is the delete initiative from the FCC to change, reduce, rewrite certain rules. I think it's interesting because for years we've seen rules that don't really apply anymore or shouldn't apply. There are rules that are just burdensome because they're paperwork. There are policy rules that it's hard to put the right word on it. And the word that I am referring to is the demand that uh, everybody who takes an NPT respond by midnight that night. And they end up with the inability to get through the server because the FCC contractor has not provided enough access. And so thousands of people are spending days trying to make this required entry. But that's for another time. But there are other things that that occur, and you've probably read that the NAB in the forefront wants to change the ownership rules. They want to reduce the limitations on certain stations. And then there are rules that apply to us, Part 73, 74, 11, and 17. And so what I'd like to do is maybe you saw, I linked to Michi's list of things that she had noted out of the 900 comments that were made. And it was not totally exhausted, Michi. I'm going to turn to you right now and let you give us a framework of what caught your eye and why.
Well, probably the most vocal in this proceeding were ham radio operators. A lot of them being misguided by conspiracy theorists on YouTube, claiming gloom and doom if the government, quote unquote, goes through with some of these, if they delete amateur radio, they're worried. They're worried about the deregulation of amateur radio. They're worried about losing spectrum. There's talk about people suggesting a reduction in the license classes. Elimination of the bit rate limitations on the HF bands. That's always been a big conversation piece, and some things that the FCC cannot do because they don't have authorization from Congress, such as doing like PRB1, the preclusion of local and state ordinances where it comes to HOAs. That's just something that cannot be done. The other vocal group was GMRS folks. And they're wanting their interconnected repeater systems, which is something they're not allowed to do. So anyway, I just want to get that out of the way here. But as far as broadcasting goes, media ownership, of course, was the big one that's on top. Everybody coming up, some folks are saying, let's just get rid of all the caps. Let's loosen up the caps. Let's do that. Then you got people, then you got the other side, like the Music First Coalition, that are saying, yeah, just leave everything alone. Everything is fine, just as it is. Just leave it alone. Probably the biggest things that come up from the individual independent broadcasters and individual organizations is the reporting, the various reports that have to be filed by broadcasters. Quarterly issues lists was the big one. A lot of folks wanting to get rid of the quarterly issues lists, the biennial ownership reports, children's television programming reports. Another huge one was the EEO, getting rid of the need for the EEO reporting. Let's see, NAB wants to get rid of the contest rules, where you have to disclose the rules of your contest over the air or on your website. The foreign sponsorship ID rules that were recently put into play a few years ago. So just some various things there on the technical side. We have people that want to get rid of third adjacent and IF spacing requirements. Those actually do have kind of there's probably some merit in those in this modern day. Relaxing the second adjacent, um, eliminating the reserve band requirements to protect channel 6. This is something that I've been very involved with too, trying to get that trying to get those restrictions pulled away now that we have transitioned to digital television. We're still using analog rules. More flexibility in the AM expanded band, being able to switch frequencies and being able to move more stations, add more stations and such. I think there's a issue there with the ITU. The Rio 79 convention specifies what frequencies can be used in what regions of the Western Hemisphere. So I don't know where that's going to go. Translators, they want up the power, increase ERPs. I've seen some say let a translator run up to 1,000 watts ERP. I think that was one of the comments I thought I saw out there. Allow translators to be fed by alternate means. So instead of going over the air, being able to, for a non-fill-in translator, being able to set up a satellator above 92. Right now it's allowed below 92, as long as the translator and the full power are commonly owned and they're both in the reserve band, you can do it. But they want to do it above. This is a repeat of, I think it was RM 10609 that came out zillions of years ago that we fought against. I think it was the Calvary Chapel of Twin Falls folks that originally proposed that many years ago. So, we've got that. They want to be able to expand the areas where AM and FM fill-in stations can go in the translator world. And one of the big ones, and this is one that's I've seen a lot of people talk about both on the proceeding and even before that, is allowing an AM station with a translator to be able to keep their translator, shut their AM station completely down, and then upgrade their translator to the primary service. That is something that cannot be done. Well, the primary service part cannot be done, and that is that's Section 5 of the Local Community Radio Act. So that would require an act of Congress. So those were the big hitter items that I saw. I mean, there was some miscellaneous things. Somebody wants to get rid of channel numbers and use frequencies instead on FM, and it's like, oh God, you're going to screw me up now. I got to rewrite all my software. No, but that's pretty much. Those are pretty much the major items that were on there. The list that I published that was linked by Barry has a lot of the nitty gritty. I go through anytime that there's a rulemaking proceeding like this. I use this document to prepare my reply comments. And this is how, and this one I made public. Sometimes I do make these public, and this one I made public because of the gravity of this proceeding.
I'm going to put that in the chat right now for anyone that wants to grab it, that they haven't seen it. And obviously, it's not a 100% comprehensive list because, good grief, 900. You would need a flock of secretaries to help you.
Well, yeah, the FCC is more than just broadcasting. So, and like I said, a good chunk of those are the amateur radio express comments. A lot of express comments. People that don't actually upload a document, but they just fill in their little free flow space there in the system. And a lot of them were just a lot of them were boilerplates.
Yeah.
Somebody probably put out a pre-written statement, said go to the FCC and put this in there, and a lot of that is amateur radio.
There are about 100 parts to the FCC rules.
Oh yeah.
And as you noted, many of these things that we're talking about or may talk about are actually congressional mandates, the CEO being one of them, that the FCC doesn't necessarily have the ability to wipe that one out without congressional approval.
Yeah, that is correct. And like I said before, though, the the HOA issue with the ham radio operators, the primary translators. There's folks that want to see LPFM go commercial. There's a lot of statute that would really make it a bad idea. I mean, there's nothing in statute that says that LPFM can't go commercial, but the impacts between the Balanced Budget Act, between the Telecom Act, pretty much when all is said and done, EMF and iHeart could own LPFM stations if they were allowed to go commercial.
Well, that's true. And then the other thing that you mentioned when we were talking the other day is all the fees that you would have to pay as a commercial station that non-coms don't have to pay. Probably one of the things you're best known for, of course, is LPFM. Watching it, as you mentioned at the beginning here about the Hollywood, Florida situation. But you've been very vocal on an issue that a lot of people may want to join our discussion right now about, and that is the EAS, especially as it applies to LPFM stations. And I'll just let you give your framework on that.
Well, I mean, as far as as far as EAS goes, it is a requirement. It is a requirement for decode only at the minimum for LPFM stations as well as LPTV stations and very small MVPDs. I support the use of EAS. I've been involved in various stakeholder meetings with FEMA. I am an IPAWS developer. So yes, I'm very involved with the EAS. There's been a lot of talk at the NAB and from NAB to come up with some software solutions that would allow for the EAS not to be embedded into, let's say, like being a module for Playout One automation or something like that, or something where it's better, where it's done through software with maybe a little bit of hardware, like SDR receivers for picking up your over-the-air stations, and not having to use these legacy pieces of hardware, like the Sage NDEC, the DASDEC. Of course, Sage is pretty much getting out of the hardware business. So we're pretty much down to only one real choice, and that's the DASDEC. And obviously they're fighting the whole software thing. I got a lashing from DASDEC when I was at NAB and talking about some of this stuff, and they were giving me their elevator pitch for a compelling argument to keep things the way they are. But overall, EAS is important. I have all the data on who's been participating in the national tests, who hasn't. We've actually made a metrics and recognition program around that on the LPFM side, because we're trying to get the LPFM numbers up. Yeah, there are a lot of LPFMs that unfortunately do not have EAS units installed. And unfortunately, we don't have the field going out and inspecting. And, they only work on the complaints, kind of like what happened in South Florida. And, this is, but I would, there definitely needs to be more choices. And even to the point of, open source solutions that are, especially for LPFM, because LPFM is at the end of the food chain. They don't have to originate anything. All they have to do is decode and forward. And I see no reason why there needs to be these massive certification issues. I know there was the cybersecurity issues and such like that. And yeah, Jeff Adams has it right. Big Brother is watching you. But yeah, there's got to be a better way to get more stations on board and using AAS. And we also need to instruct we need to better educate the alert originators. Meanwhile, as a cat tries to come walking on me, we saw some really bad screw ups during the Palisades and Eaton fires in Los Angeles, mainly on WIA. But it just goes to show you that when you don't have your systems built right, and it depend on a macro or a single button, You get things like the alert that went out to the entire county to tell them to evacuate now, or like what happened in Hawaii a few years ago with the incoming missile. So yeah. Um, Education needs to go all the way around in the picture here, and
It really does. We have, of course, many times discussed you've got the mandate from the FCC and the voluntary that's on the emergency manager side. And very often they don't match very well, do they?
no, and EAS is an unfunded mandate, and every time that FEMA sneezes, or any time that Jessica Rosenworcel sneezed, it was gonna further bankrupt a lot of small stations. This whole cap polling nonsense that came out, which was the reason for the SageBox delay. Um, you know, that was totally unnecessary for radio. TV, I could see it, but even in TV, not too many agencies are using iPause, and the National Weather Service does not use iPause. If the National Weather Service used iPause and gave us decent things coming through iPause that could be crawlable, or readable, for over the air, yeah, then I would be more accepting of the cap polling and such. But right now, the cap polling provides zero benefit to radio. And for some stations, it was a $199 upgrade. For some, it was a $500 upgrade, a $1,000 upgrade. Some stations had to buy new equipment, news DASDEC units, new index 35, 4, $3,000 or so. This is all because somebody decided that, hey, we need to change, we need to make somebody's life more comfortable, I guess you could say. you know
Okay. Now, I'm going to do two things here. First of all, Bill Robertson is with us, and I'm going to give him a chance to kind of respond to part of what you're saying. And I agree with a part of what you're saying as well. Uh, the whole EAS has become so complex and so far beyond what its original purpose was from the point of national alert. And we have all the problems from the missile alert, the
Mhm.
zombie alerts, the WEA problems, on and on and on. And then, of course, the issues of the cost for an LPFM. On the other hand, as Bill will point out, they've only really done one paid upgrade since 2012. And the other upgrade, that simply had to be because the technology, the 32-bit boards didn't work anymore. But let me just stop and pause because I'd like you, if you would be so kind, anyone that's watching can respond to the FCC with reply comments until next week. Tell us how to do that, would you?
Oh, just go into the FCC's electronic comment filing system, which is fcc.gov/ECFS. At the top menu, um, one of the options there is submit a filing. Click on submit a filing, and the proceeding number that's going to ask for is 25-133. And then you just fill in the rest with your information, and the type of comment is a reply comment. It's probably best to prepare your comments like in MS Word, type everything out, and either upload it as a Word file, or I prefer people when they upload it as a PDF. Switch it to a PDF and then upload that. You'll be able to upload multiple files if you need to, and make yourself heard.
And there
You
is no specific format. You can do it as a stream of consciousness. You don't have to make it with all the legal terminology.
know,
It helps if you point to the rule section that you want to comment on and make your comment. And if you respond to a previous comment, that's the best way to do it.
yeah. Also, too, if you're responding to somebody else, it's also best to refer to their comments. And that's what the document that I put out will help you do, because it's going to tell you, who made the comment, who made, where that subject matter is, and on what pages of the document that you'll find those, and then you cite that. You say, like, NAB wants, we agree with the NAB on deleting efficiency standards in 73.45b2. And then you could put, either in a footnote or maybe just after it in parentheses, NAB at 5758. That way they know. Go to pages 57 and 58 of NAB's comments. That's where you'll see what they're talking about.
Yeah. We don't know, obviously, how many of these changes or deletions the commission will ultimately accomplish, but we do know that staff will be directed to look and read it all, and therefore it is worth your time to make your view known on these matters. Now,
It's also important to realize, too, that nothing is going to get immediately changed necessarily from this proceeding. This proceeding is basically Brendy's suggestion box.
Yeah,
Basically, he just opened up the gates. Anything that changes would have to go through a notice of proposed rulemaking and follow the Administrative Procedure Act.
Yep. So let's go back to EAS. And I've been I've been a critic of a number of facets of EAS from the beginning, including the god-awful FIPS codes that the Weather Service continues to use. I still say that we should be doing the county or identifying the city nearest the weather event, but that's another story altogether. Bill Robertson is the GM here of DASDEC, Digital Alert Systems. And not only are you sort of the last man standing in a way, but you're trying to balance the needs of the rules of Congress, of the stations, of the emergency managers, and everything else, which is no small matter, is it?
No, not really. It's a wee bit tricky. I will say that we are preparing our filing with comments. Our Ed Zardicki, who is our point of contact for that, is producing those. I did put in the chat the link for the filing if someone wants to file on behalf of anything that they'd like to do. A simple way to link in and produce some information. It is interesting. There are a couple of different things around elements that Michelle brought up, and we addressed, I think, some of those in our filing, which we intend on submitting here shortly.
Okay, well, that's good to know. I think one of the key things, Michelle and Bill, both of you come from different directions. Your sensitivity, Michelle, is got those LPFMs. It's a tough world out there where they can't run commercials, and so paying anything for any hardware from the transmitter on down can be stressful. On the other hand, Bill, you've got the mandate, and as Michi said, the FCC and FEMA, they keep making changes that would drive many a manufacturer crazy.
One of the things I will say, and I very much agree with Michelle in this matter, we did not like the most recent thing about the what we call trigger cap polling. Part of it was because they modified the rules. We had put this in our version 4 software going back in 2018. We actually introduced it and it made it available for people as part of our version 4 software. The bad thing about it is the rules changed what we did and actually made us dumb our system down. We had more flexibility in being able to say what was trigger cap polled. For example, why do a trigger cap poll on a tornado? You want to get that fast. You don't want to wait in any length of time for a cap equivalent message. So our systems were actually prior to the most recent stuff, we could tailor each of those things very uniquely. And the unfortunate thing is they changed the rules, and as I said, made it made us dumb our system down so that we couldn't do some of the selectivity that we had. So I was not too happy with the rule change and being forced to actually take functionality out of our box to support a particular stance that they had come up with. Hey, this is a,
That said, let me just stop.
Mhm.
That said, any of you out there who are in tornado country, this is a thing that you really should make a part of your comments to get rid of that cap pulling requirement to wait as long as it takes for the cap message to come down.
Well, Barry, I wouldn't say get rid of it. I mean, it's there now, but the idea of the fact that you could expand it to allow selectivity was the whole thing. So by event, so TOR, for example, you don't have to use trigger cap polling. Now you do. You're forced to it for every event code. And it wouldn't necessarily be something to just get rid of it because I think that's the wrong stance too. And to Michelle's point, also, we do a lot of stuff in the television space, and where you can get an Amber Alert that we post how much more impressive the data set in a cap message for an Amber Alert is to be able to present that. There is some reasoning behind it, but the fact that we've been forced by some of these things to change it and not allow a unique implementation of it, or as I say, a selective implementation of it, is the part that's a little bit disconcerting. Again, part of the things that we're driven by regulations of the things that we have to do. We have to kind of put those things into a set of what's required and what's necessary and bring those things together. We are looking forward to, and I think that part of this, as I said before, our trigger cap polling implemented was back in 2018. I mean, we were way ahead of the thing. We've done a lot of other innovations in emergency alerting and other elements that we have. Our protocols that we developed with EASnet, being able to do remote stuff, being able to do the hybrid virtualization. I mean, we have AES 67 in our box. We've got a whole bunch of things to be able to do that. So where the legacy systems set behind, we've gone forward. We're on our third generation hardware with our G3 stuff now. We've got a lot of really neat things that we can do to work in virtual space and hybrid virtual space, and look forward to an opportunity to come together as an industry with a good set of guardrails, if you will, around how we can implement even more things in the future.
Let me ask this question, and both you and Michi, I'd like to hear your thoughts. What do you think would be if there was a rule or a waiver or a section where the LPFMs could be set up with what we used to have is an EBS system, where basically what happened is when the alert was sent off, the receiver opened up, and then the LPFM could just shut down. You think that would be a good way to go?
Well, that was Conelrad.
Well, yeah, we're going all the way.
Now, the EAS does serve a purpose, and the local stations, they do serve a purpose. Now, going back to one of your issues that you raised, a very valid one, is regarding the FIPS codes. For an LPFM station, I'm in Wycomico County is pretty big, and I'm on the very far west end of the county. I mean, I'm right on the Nanacoke River, hence the name Riverton. So I'm on the very far west part of the county. If a tornado alert comes on the very east end of the county, like towards Willards and towards Worcester County, that doesn't concern me. But my EAS will break because it's in the same county. So this is an issue. I mean, the National Weather Service has talked about partial county alerting, which is a way to be able to divide up the county into 9 different areas. And so that way, alerts could be, in these larger counties could be more localized. I mean, look at San Bernardino County, California.
Or Pima County, Arizona.
Pima County, yeah, Pima County, Arizona is pretty big.
And they do not do it well. I won't say the word disaster, but I will tell you that after 6 years of talking with the National Weather Service, they haven't done anything that really fixes for West Pima County.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Yeah, I'm from Arizona, so I know what you mean.
Phipps City.
Uh, yeah, so that, so so there are some things there, but I do feel that it is a broadcaster's responsibility, including an LPFM, to to be out there to put the message out there. I don't think that tucking your tail and running when when something is coming is really in the spirit of broadcasting, and for our true community stations that really, that the ones that actually give a damn about their communities, that's something that they would not want to do. They would want to be there, and they would want to be on the air
Of course.
and
But
talking about
if
them.
you go back to EBS and Conelrad, there were people in radio stations. Now it's all automated. And perhaps LPFM is somewhat less automated than general, but you still have this issue of if there is an alert, how does it get out?
I don't know. I used to be pretty active in LPFM, having one of the first five in Texas. And back when we had a hurricane that wiped out New Orleans, and I don't remember what year that was, it came up here in East Texas where we had some serious weather problems and a whole bunch of refugees coming from New Orleans trying to find places to stay. And our LPFM station was one of the only stations on the air in the Tyler Longview area because we had a generator and they didn't. So I can't see turning off the LPFMs just because some of them are jukeboxes, but they aren't all that way. There's some good ones.
Yeah. And the potential for resiliency on a on an LPFM being a smaller facility is actually far greater. Look at what happened during Katrina.
Yep.
And all the full power sticks went off the air. One of the only stations that remained on the air was an LPFM station. And because of the fact that there was nobody else around, the FCC did grant them an STA to go to 250 watts during the disaster. And so there is definitely a need for the smaller more local stations, and especially when, yeah, if if the power goes out, it's easy to just to get out a smaller generator, fire it up, and suddenly bam, you've got a transmitter back on the air doing something. Where if, where if one of these big sticks goes down, yeah, that's that's hauling fuel up to the mountain, that kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Well, we ran for 3 days on a generator.
Yep.
When all the other big stations go off the air, it's amazing how far a little station can actually go when you don't have a bunch of co-channel interference.
Absolutely. I want to get on to the third adjacent, second adjacent. I'd like to talk about that a little bit. But before we go there, Bill, I'd like to come back to you and ask you if there is anything that you see. Uh, Maybe it's going to be in your comments, but can you sort of preview in a way anything you can see that would be of help to the LPFMs? Because I see open source software as a real can of worms.
Um, I'm going to leave that to our comments. We talk about that in some detail, with some specifics around it. So I'll leave that right now. Again, I don't want to speak with when we've already put Ed as our point of contact for that. But yes, there's some genuine concerns.
Okay, and so maybe
I would like to address one thing that Michelle said too, that I very much agree with her on, is, and it's interesting, a lot of people, and quite frankly, a lot of the emergency managers, which you talked about Pima County and the being able to subdivide FIPS codes, it really comes to the people understanding it. The sad thing is that they're all fixated on this. They're all fixated on the phone. They're fixated on this is going to be the device and this is what they're going to do. And what they fail to recognize is lots of times the tried and the true in broadcasting is something that doesn't require routers. It doesn't require bits set that might be set wrong or anything else. It doesn't require, and it doesn't we saw recently what was it, the big UFC fight that kind of crashed the servers when they tried to do it because more people joined than what they had anticipated. They weren't gunning. Radio is one of the things that it doesn't matter if there's one person, 1,000 people, or 10,000 people listening. It still works, and it really works well. They don't have to worry about all of the other things. And these are all, the cell phones are all serviced by to get a WIA message. It's essentially it's a CAP message. That means it's got to come over the internet. It's got to come through different things. And as Michelle points out, not everybody's on iPods. Not everybody's using it. So there's a lot of stuff around this where I think that radio guys should stand up and be counted, if you will, more about this because it is a unique offering that only radio and broadcasting in the general sense can do. And this is the thing that if you want to talk about really what the idea behind broadcast being able to do that, as Chuck pointed out, the only transmitter standing was this transmitter that they had because it had power, it had an antenna, and it was able to send information. And that's one of the key things. I just continue to see radio, and me even being a ham operator, it's the same thing. I see radio as one of the most critical things around being able to communicate efficiently, effectively to a large audience. And it doesn't matter the number of the audience. We can get information out to people when it's necessary.
And as an EAS evangelist, which you should be, all those are very valid things. And I think radio very often, and this becomes a programming and management issue, radio forgets that they are serving a community and they need to be there. I think that somebody should be monitoring their own station 24/7, but
Yeah.
that's another story.
Well, and some of the stuff that we did there, Barry, even going back 10 years, we integrated the crawl information that you would see normally displayed on a television crawl into the RDS systems. So being able to have, if you had an FM with RDS, you'd have the crawl data, which could represent information. We've talked about and we showcased last year at NAB being able to put graphic symbols and replace the cover art with a symbol, the VIDS graphics that we have, the visually integrated display symbology. And something that's unique about that too is radio can have persistence. So bring that graphic symbol up that doesn't have to worry. It's not language based or anything else, but you've got a symbol to recognize there's an event that you're under right now, and showcase that. You can bring that up for whatever the duration is. If I'm in the store and a tornado warning goes off, I come out of the store, I turn on my radio or turn on my car or my radio, and there's a symbol that says there's a tornado. I know I'm under a tornado watch. I might have missed the intro and the whole EAS part of it, but my display shows me that I'm still currently under a tornado warning for whatever the period of time is. Things like this that we can do to improve the service that we have and we offer is really something that can go a long way.
And I'm going to invite you back to talk about that and some other aspects of EAS all by itself. Next month, maybe?
Thank you.
Hey, Barry,
Yes, sir.
at the risk of scaring myself to death to say anything here, I just want to mention, I was very involved with the LA County EAS for many, many years as the LECC chair. One of the things that it's easy to forget is how much turnover there is in local government and how little they know about feeding this and initiating the information. I've had a lot of people in LA County, very well-meaning, become caffeinated on EAS, and they want to take it over, and they have all these great ideas. Now, I'm measuring the fact that this is an unfunded mandate with all the stations, with reduced staffs and all that sort of thing. I'm also measuring it against the fact that there's a lot of turnover, and the county governments that maintain these systems have any technical expertise. So what I try to do is calm everybody down and say, look, I'm trying as the chair of the largest, county in the country to just keep this going, not break it. This has nothing to do with my daytime job. And I'm no longer, the chair. There's someone else doing that. Thank goodness. I did it for, I think, 16 years. But the bottom line is we need to realize that if we can keep this system as simple as possible, this is my opinion. I like to call it, keep the boxes like a toaster. It just does one thing, it pops out the toast and there's only a couple of knobs on it. I get concerned about Windows updates and this and that and the other thing, and router changes and this and that and the other thing. Realizing that the folks who are feeding this source with the emergency information have rapid turnover and lack of expertise. They're very well-meaning, and somebody will try to grab it, make a change, because they're very interested in this, the latest shiny thing. Maybe there's a promotion in it for them, and I get that, and that's all good. But then they're gone. And we're back to the same people like who are on this call right now, who are trying to keep this system going because it is very valuable. So just 2 cents worth, and that's strictly under the color of authority of being a past LECC chair in LA County for many, many years.
Thank you. Appreciate that very much. Michi, you have anything else about EAS before we move on?
No, that's Lark is pretty much spot on that, and the other issues that we seem to be having in some places, including here in Maryland, is because of all the consolidation and all the turnaround within the broadcast industry. We're having issues with assuring that our SECCs, our State Emergency Communication Coordinator structures, remain intact. I've been asked to come on. I'm actually involved with the Maryland SECC now, with working on some of the stuff, fixing up. A lot of the state plans are very out of date. Stations have changed, and there's definitely, I think there's probably a few places out there where the state plans, some of these state plans have not been updated in like 10 or 15 or 20 years. And they're probably way due for an update. But it's just these unfunded mandates, especially the things that happened during the Rosen-Worcel administration. I'm overall, I'm pretty supportive of Chair Rosen-Worcel on a lot of things, but where it comes to some of these policies, her and I have definitely clashed heads. The cap polling, the multilingual EAS proposal, the mandatory DERS and NORS reporting. We are just totally at opposite ends, and actually it brought REC closer to the NAB in our relationship by holding those positions. So there definitely needs to be some fixes, but we need to be able to work with what we've got, and
Yep.
And because that'll take a load of development time off of our friends at DASDEC. At Sage, they're still supposedly going to be doing software updates to their NDEC. So every little thing that we could to do within our current capabilities, but we also need to have common sense regulation behind them. I am totally for pulling back on certain event codes going through cap polling, especially anything that comes from the National Weather Service. Anything coming from the National Weather Service should never go through cap polling until the National Weather Service has fully deployed iPods in all their weather stations, and that's not happening.
No, unfortunately, even their current software, the fellow who wrote it died. They have no way of updating their software to become part of CAP at this point.
Ironically, the iPod system, if you have access to the iPod's raw feeds, which I have, I was one of those that signed a memorandum of understanding with FEMA to get access to them at the time. There's multiple feeds. There's a EAS feed, there's a non-EAS feed, and there's a WIA feed. And it used to be that the National Weather Service would come through the non-EAS feed, and it was a very reliable National Weather Service cap update that came through there, they had to discontinue it. The FEMA discontinued it, claiming it was causing too much of a load on their systems. And I have systems that monitor. If you go to recnet.com/cap, you could see you could see our monitoring of all of the EAS, the non-EAS, and the WIA feeds there. And because of this, I had to design new capability to go now to the National Weather Service's, we'll call it CAP Light version of the information that they deliver.
Wow.
So,
Well, again, there's so much there, and you could say that there are a lot of people that have good intentions, but with an FCC, which is mostly lawyers and no engineers, they don't understand how people actually operate out in the field, and some of these directions and edicts do tend to get to be a bit much. Michi, you
Yeah.
talked about this a bit. I see, Ben, you're still here. Can we talk about this second, third adjacent matter?
yeah, sure. There's some push right now because of the modern design of most of the receivers that are made today. That a lot of the modern receivers reject third adjacent, and many reject second adjacent fairly well. So the thoughts are, why do we even still have these restrictions on second and third adjacent? And from an engineering standpoint, I could see, I could definitely see a reason to get rid of it. Many years ago, I was in where was I? I was in Paris. I had a little radio with me, and I was scanning the dial. I mean, you go to Paris, the dial, if you're using an older radio with analog tuning, the whole entire band is completely full. You cannot move that. You cannot move that knob without not hearing something. And when I looked at the frequency list, yeah, everything was like third adjacent. Now keep in mind they use 100 kilohertz spacing out there, so everything is like the equivalent of like third adjacent, 2.5, 3.5 adjacent in our world. And even my little radio with with shoddy tuning was able to reject those second and third adjacent stations fairly well. My car radios do that just as well too. So the thought was to get rid of that. Now on the administrative side, at least in the full power world, the second and third adjacents are also artificial barriers that are put up to assure fair distribution of services among among the cities and in the communities and the states. Part of Section 307B of the Communications Act. From a technical standpoint, I could totally understand dropping second and third adjacent for, like, let's say, translators. But for the actual assignment of stations to communities, yeah, there's definitely I would raise a 307 issue on second and third adjacent where it comes to that.
Ben, could we ask you if you have a comment on that? Hoping he's still with us.
You asking me?
Yes, sir.
Well, I have some opinions on the subject, which, in the first place, certainly modern receivers can reject very close frequency spacing for traditional AM or traditional FM signals. The presence of the IBOC sidebands makes that a bit more complicated question. With respect to Michelle's comment about Paris, indeed, the stations in Paris for a long time, 30 years now, more, were spaced 400 kilohertz. But part of that was by using alternate polarization, so that two stations spaced 400 kilohertz one would have vertical, the other would have horizontal polarization. Then later, as receivers got better, the French and other Europeans changed over the situation to allow circular or elliptical polarization. And that it sort of ties in, the receiver question sort of ties in with the IF spacing question as well. Simply modern receivers, are just simply much better than they used to be. The first close spacing that I'm aware of was the one we did in Caracas many years ago when FM was just being developed in Venezuela, where we put 2 Caracas stations 3 channels apart rather than the 4 channels that would normally be the case. Canada has licensed several facilities in major Canadian cities that are only 3 channels spaced. What criteria their regulatory agency has imposed on them, I'm not aware of, but I am aware of the allotment situation. You always have to sit back and understand that frequency allocation isn't just physics. As Michelle sort of alluded earlier, the determination of frequency allocation is based on an acceptable level of interference to allow the political service that appears to be required. So that's the real driving point. And as you pointed out earlier, unfortunately, the commission these days doesn't seem to pay much attention even to its own engineers, much less anybody else with technical expertise. So I will shut up now and let you go on.
Scott Todd mentions here in the chat box there are cheap hotel radios that can't separate stations on the other end of the same band, and that's true. There are reasons to relax this requirement, and there are reasons to be cautious, as Ben said, the HD sidebands, for instance. What other laws or policies or rules do you see that could be eliminated or changed? Anything that you have as a particular favorite rule that sticks in your craw? Is it the issues and programs list? Is it the station ID law rule?
Barry, I'll throw one out there that I think I'm surprised it didn't get addressed. I think that the ETRS things for EAS, the Form 1, Form 2, Form 3 is onerous. I think that the process is frankly, I think that we should test EAS on a national level more frequently. My point would be that we subdivide and do a east, central, west region on a quarterly basis, and then come together once a year and do a national test. But the problem is any kind of national test, and by the way, NPT can be set up to be regionalized. It's a standard event code that can be regionalized. But the downside of it is the fact that any NPT right now requires such a massive amount of energy and effort to support the ETRS stuff that it just becomes more of a headache. And it'd be really nice if we could just, say, okay, we're going to do these tests, but maybe file once a year or something like that. But I think that's one of the problems is the amount of effort that it takes to do this is not worth the value of what we're getting back out of it.
Well, yeah, you get a report about 18 months later. There is, by the way, for all that I am aware of, no plan yet for an NPT this year. And it may be unlikely that there will be, given how far into the year we already are. DIRS was mentioned. I think, was that Michi? Was that you?
I mentioned DERS and NORS. Yeah.
What, it's a nice concept. If you're off the air and need help, let the FCC know and they'll issue an immediate STA or whatever else you need. But if you're off the air and have no power, you don't have internet, you can't file a DIRS.
Exactly. And that's one of the points that we made in that situation was, and also too, the DERS form, at least during that period, the DERS form was very mobile unfriendly. I think they've changed it now, but the old DERS form was very mobile unfriendly. So even if your power's out, but your cell phone's still working, you still have to complete a ton of stuff on a daily basis just to tell the FCC whether you are on or off the air. If it was something as simple as an app on your phone and you have a little red or a green button saying I'm on, I'm off, that might be a little bit easier for stations to deal with. But I just don't see. I just don't see. This is the problem with the DERS reporting. The problem with like ETRS Form 1, the NORS. It's instant gratification for some mucky muck in DC. That's all it's for, and there's really there's no real public benefit. I mean, if you report in DERS that you're off the air, is there going to be a military helicopter coming over and lowering you a generator? If something comes out of it, there's nothing that comes out of it. It's just the FCC's way of saying, hey, these stations are off the air. I mean, I could see this more in the wireless infrastructure, in the wireless mobile carrier stuff. I could totally see where the DERS and NORS reporting is more helpful. But I just don't see it where it comes to radio and television. They're trying to, and the other problem too with the DERS and NORS mandates that I've talked about is they're treating, the Homeland Security Public Safety Bureau, which is the one that's leading all this. They are treating broadcasters, small independent group owners, mom and pops, everybody. They're treating them like they're major telecom providers like AT&T and Verizon, thinking that they've got these massive departments and these offsite places that could report things and this surveillance and monitoring and all that. And if I have a small station somewhere in an affected area and I've got maybe 2 or 3 people working there, we're on the air and we're going to be making radio. We're going to be actually gathering information, getting it on the air. We have no time to sit there and fill out 15 spaces on a form every day to say, hey, we're on the air. That was really the main thing with, and then the NORS reporting, the network outage reporting system was the other one they wanted to do. They wanted a filing to NORS any time you went off the air. You shut down at 1 a.m. on a Sunday to do some adjustments, or on the AM side, maybe do a DX test. You got to report it to NORS. Station goes dead air probably. NORS report. No, this is part of Rosenworcel's agenda that I was totally not agreeing with, and I'm pretty sure the Carr administration is not gonna put those things through.
You're absolutely right. I mean, if you're off the air, you've got something else to do, like trying to get back on the air, rather than filling out some long-winded form.
And the other thing on ETRS, and I think there's some ways, especially since EAS is software, and this is where Bill can come in with some comments too, if necessary. Why can't we just have it so if there's a national periodic test, that once it's received, guess what? The EAS box then sends a packet somewhere that says, yep, they received it. And yep.
What a concept.
Yeah,
that would work. I mean, it ought to be able to do that. I think, if call home.
It's 100% doable.
Oh yeah.
Here's where the rub comes in. Number one, any of the boxes right now will send an email. So right there, you've already got a confirmation as a very simple thing. You could have an email sent that says, hey, I received this alert, and that'd be fine. The rub comes in because it's a regulatory compliance thing. We actually developed some of the stuff to automatically fill in some of the details in the ETRS reports. And the situation is the fact that someone has to, and this is where the yin and the yang is. If it's a regulatory thing and you're held to it, someone should review it before some automated system just submits it to the FCC.
Yeah, and I was just going to interrupt. I'm sorry about that.
Go ahead.
But here's what I'm thinking. This is my thought. Form 1. All Form 1 asks is, did you receive the alert? Did you forward it? That can be easy.
No, that's Form 2.
That's Form 2. I mean, Form 2. Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah, Form 1. Yeah, Form 2 can be completely automated.
I 100%. And here's the thing: if we just come up with a protocol of what that could be and where it goes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And this would be something that we could do. Again, as I mentioned before, the problem is the ETRS is so onerous because you have the big long thing with 73 fields in it for Form 1. All the different things that you have to fill in. And you're right, Form 2, did you receive it? Did you forward it? Very simple, and that's an acknowledgement of that. But again, it's part of the filing and the legal part of it. But I definitely, we've promoted this with our systems to be able to look into doing something like this. So I very much agree. And
Yeah.
and anything we can do to take that, and Michelle, you made another point that I think is lost a lot of times on this is the idea of the smaller person, the people that get their hands dirty is quite a bit different than a big, AT&T and Verizon, where they've got NOCs, they've got network operation centers that monitor everything. If a door opens in a cabinet, they know it. I mean, that's the kind of level of detail. They have alarms set up for all kinds of stuff, and they've got people and personnel that can easily go through that. Here you're talking about where the dichotomy of these people to the very lowest level of EAS participants is a wide range of technical skill and capability. And
Sometimes there are guys that take care of 20 stations on EAS.
yep,
Form 1, there's there is one rational reason that you could acknowledge, checking to make sure that the current contact person for a radio station or TV station is correct. People move on, not just in government circles, but in broadcast.
yep.
But all the rest of it is garbage. It's just fodder for the bureaucratic, whoever they are.
And,
Yeah, I
Barry,
mean,
the ththing that's so sad, you mentioned it too, is the fact it's 18 months later by the time we finally get feedback on what we did 18 months ago. And and I don't know about you guys, but in engineering, you do something, you test, you evaluate, you make a change, and then you test again. And the only way we can make a system this complex better and is to test it more frequently.
I
But
have
to
long
make the tests so difficult to do and that rubs wrong against what we're really trying to accomplish.
I have long advocated that at this stage, I mean, here we are, what, 28 years after this has gotten started. Every SECC should know if all the stations in their state got the test each month. And if not, someone,
Yep.
do I hear SBE in the background? Should be checking as a public service.
Well,
Simple.
maybe you need to pay that person to do that. I don't
Why?
know.
Why?
Well, I mean, it's a job, but I think my biggest gripe with the tests is don't you have to have it submitted Form 1 by midnight of the day of the test, and that
No,
really
that's early. That's early in the year. It's Form
24
2.
hours.
It's Form 2 where they want you to be there within the day, regardless of whether the server is going to hold up or not. And they don't. They have not once in the last 10 years. I've spoken to PSHSB. They say, "Oh yes, we've talked to our contractor. We've got plenty of server capacity."
Yeah,
I,
they don't.
I,
I think they got a Tandy Radio Shack TRS-80 with the server somewhere.
I would just love to see the question I would raise is what is the government's interest, the justification for even Form 2 even existing? Why? Why do we need this instant gratification? Why can't we just go from Form 1, filling out your basics, and then Form 3 within 90 days of the test, after you've had a chance to go through, listen to the recordings? I have a DAS deck. I'm still on version 4 over here, I admit. But I don't have a station on the air yet. But, why, and I, even though I don't have a station, I've been participating in every NPT. I'm one of those like 7 or 8 that show up on the list as others. Yeah, one of those is me. So, and I will, and I'll say, yeah, I listen to the quality of the announcements and such. And, Form 3 asks, what issues did you run into, and what did you do? That takes time. If there's an issue, let's say you're using a different brand box and you have external radios. Maybe the levels are turned up too high and it was sounding like a zombie apocalypse, which happens out here on Delmarva quite a bit on the NPTs. I've got a couple recordings online that show you the horror stories that we have from out here. But those things take time to fix. And if it's simple adjustment and you have to wait till probably the next RMT before that the fix worked. That's where that Form 3, I could see the need for Form 3. I could see the need for Form 1. But there's absolutely no justification for Form 2. Somebody's instant gratification shouldn't be something that we as broadcasters have to completely bend over 180 degrees backwards for, in order to grease somebody's ego that 94% of the stations out there forwarded the alert. It's like, who needs to know that? And why are we bending over backwards for that? So yeah, I would totally advocate getting rid of Form 2.
Folks, this is where you go. FCC.gov ECFS.
Yep, scroll up.
And it's 25.
And go. Okay.
33.
If you're trying to submit one, see where it says submit a filing in big capital letters there? Very top bar. Up. Okay, to the right. Submit, nope, 2 bar. Submit a filing. There you go. Then in proceedings, you type in 25-133. It'll come up and say, select the delete there. Boom. All right, and the rest of it is pretty self-explanatory. The type of filing is comments. Reply comments. If you're, at this time it would be reply comments. Either reply, yeah, and then you can just the rest is Now, if you're that's the form that you use if you have pre-prepared documents. That's why I said do a Word doc or a PDF, and you have it where you're able to upload. Now, there should be another option to, if you just want to do a free space a form. It's express comment. See express comment there. All right. So basically you do all the same stuff, but scroll all the way down. See, you got a nice little free form space to put stuff in there. I'll be honest with you. As somebody who responds to a lot of these proceedings, I usually ignore the express comments. I first look at yeah, Michelle Bradley wants
I thought you'd enjoy that.
Oh, people have been using the express comments to say some very interesting things about Elon Musk. If you dig through some of those 900 comments, some of them are not even related to the FCC.
Yeah, that's common too, unfortunately.
Yeah, and then you got the folks out there that are saying that the 5G towers are causing cancer. You got all that fluffiness out there right now. There are some interesting things that are out there.
Okay, well, we've passed the hour here. I know some folks are going to have to start closing down for the day. Any other particular rules that we should comment on that need changing or rearranging or deletion? Anyone have a thought that they wanted to share? Just don't want to let us pass here without everyone having a chance to comment.
Come on, we know you all have a wish list.
But certainly, please do consider making a comment, going to the FCC site there And as you can see, it can be done very informally. You don't even have to file it with a major word processor or something like that.
Yeah.
Stan Carter says it gives a government employee a job.
That's a federal government job. That's a commodity these days.
And he also mentions the FM translators for AM stations becoming standalone. I think this probably needs a major comment that that's not a good thing.
Didn't Elon Musk get rid of everyone at the FCC?
Well, I think there was a lot of pressure for a lot of folks getting ready to take their retirements. So that's why was it last month's meeting? There were a lot of retirement announcements. Jeffrey Starks has announced that he's going to be resigning from the commission here sometime, quote, later this spring, end quote. So that would bring the commission down to right now a 2-1 commission, 2 Republicans, 1 Democrat. This is the smallest I've ever seen the commission in, in that I remember. So, that's, that's pretty much what's going on. And we still are going through the confirmation processes for Olivia Trusty. And, and until Stark's resignation is official, we don't know if or when the current president is going to nominate another Democrat to hold that 5th seat.
Well, one quick question. For anyone who's really looked through the comments, has anybody been any comments about the technical rules around Part 15 and all those manufacturers who don't really want to go through all the trouble of certifying a low power device to meet the requirements of Part 15 and those devices that screw up all of our other devices? Curiosity.
Going through, I don't really get too involved in like the TCBs and the equipment certification processes, but I did see a few comments in there that talked about various subjects regarding the certifications and the TCBs and the ability to be able to manufacture. So one of them was to be able to manufacture small quantities and not have to worry about going through the certification process. There's the folks out there that want to build Part 15 transmitters and sell them for like the AM or FM broadcast band, and basically, I guess to compete with all the Chinese junk that's coming in that's not certified at all, and it's causing all kinds of mayhem across the country.
Yeah, I'm just concerned with delete. I hope the commission does not completely give up its responsibility to regulate the interference between devices and services. There's a lot of ceremony and forms, as we've discussed, and this and that they can get rid of, but the basic responsibility to regulate interference is still lies basically with the commission.
Wasn't that their original directive?
I think that ship has sailed.
I'm afraid you're right.
And
But
it's
that was what
the
they're
other
supposed to
end of the
do.
planet.
Yeah, but that's what they were supposed to do rather than enforce employment rules and things like that. It's just, it seems, well, they need some engineers, I guess. That's the whole problem.
Well, I think I've mentioned this before to the group. When the commission was talking about bringing on the national tests and the NPTs and whatnot, a bunch of us were invited to a meeting. This was years ago with the commission, and in the room there was myself and one other engineer, and everyone else was lawyers. And in a 2-hour meeting, most of the discussion was around the reporting forms, what the penalty was if they were not on time, and what the commission was going to do with the data on the forms that were submitted. Almost nothing had anything to do with the technical aspects of so what is it you're going to do and what is it you want us to do? Most of it, like I said, in the 2 hour meeting was around the forms and the reporting. So as indicated before, it's basically a building full of lawyers, very few technical people.
Well, you raise a very good point, and this is something that I think goes in several different directions. You come to the point and you say, is the ABIP uh, still worth anything, or has it become passé? The number of stations which routinely ignore one or more rules, I think this is a major issue. The complaint portal, which we had a program on some time ago. Sorry about the flashing here. Uh, the complaint portal has been redesigned and even allows you to make an anonymous complaint if necessary, so that now that the inspectors are no longer confined to their offices, and there are some inspections going out, as obviously we can tell from the Hollywood, Florida NOVs, it's an opportunity to get the word out when things are not right, when interference is there, or see, this becomes an issue, I think, sometimes uh, almost a professional thing. If you know a station is violating the rules, not your station, should you do something about it? Anyone want to make a comment there?
I say they should. And the problem that I hear is that there's a lot. The problem is that a lot of people feel that they're not empowered to, make those complaints. There's also the field of folks that say, if we complain about one station, that's going to send the FCC into town. Guess what? They're going to be checking out everybody else too. And that's what some people fear. And during the NAB, for the self-inspection guides, I saw that you have a self-inspection guide topic coming up in about a month or two. I was on the panel at the West Hall, and I did speak about the LPFM compliance issues, and I had several presidents of state broadcasters associations in the audience. And I told them, I said, look, you got an issue with an LPFM, send it to me, because I have no tolerance for any BS where it comes to the LPFM stations. Again, no get out of jail free card with me. Send it to me. I will try to reach out to the station, because a lot of times it's underwriting and them not understanding, the stations not understanding the wording, or in the case of Hollywood, Florida, where it's just blatant egregious behavior. Sometimes it's a misunderstanding. I reach out to these stations. I will tell them, look, we heard these. This is what, the scripts on these are wrong. Here's how you can fix them. And if they respond to me and they eventually do change and fix things up, great. Guess what? No FCC involved. And I told the state broadcasters associations, I said, look, we'll do, send them to me. I'll do an outreach. If for some reason they never get back to me, or they do get back to me, but they don't change anything, then you got my blessing to file a complaint.
Most of the professional societies do check on their members from time to time, or respond to tips that are given, the AMA, for instance, and others. The SBE has been very reluctant to look into the smaller markets, especially those stations that don't have an engineer, maybe a contractor. Maybe they don't even have that unless there's a major piece of damage. So how do you process stations? I mean, for crying out loud, if they're licensed for 120 watts and they're running a kilowatt, there's something not right there.
So Barry?
Yes, sir.
So on the comment of, well, we're not going to call the FCC because they're going to inspect everyone. That's prattle. That's a ridiculous thing to say. Not that couldn't happen. but that's self-serving. So I would say never repeat that again. That could happen on any inspection anywhere. It's not related to this. The FCC relies on complaints, and it's important. So if you, I tell people all the time, you're just whining if you don't file a complaint. And if you're concerned about, being anonymous, well, you can do that. The commission does need to, confirm to make sure the complaint's not a hoax. That's the rub. But please file the complaints.
Absolutely.
Do not hesitate. You pay for it. The commission is trying to give a fair shake to the legitimate operators, whether they be low power. There's some outstanding low power stations that I just marvel at what they do. To the full-time guys that are towing the line and trying to do a good job. For me, the scofflaws are taking food off the table of the hardworking people who are trying to do it right, and that is not acceptable. We all play by the same rules.
Lark, let me ask you a question, and I hope you'll be able to answer this. I don't want you to go beyond what you feel comfortable. And that is, back in the day, 50 years ago, let's say, the EICs from the FCC were known to come into town and to come to a radio station and say, hey, guy, let me watch and inspect your station. And in general, if something was not right, he was more interested in getting it corrected than writing a ticket. I can go back to the 1980s when I had a knock at the back door of a station I was visiting. I wasn't even their engineer at the time. And Dane Erickson knocked on the door and said, let's take a look at your modulation monitor. And by the time that he left, we had adjusted the modulation monitor to be correct, and he was satisfied. On the other hand, in the 80s and 90s, there were reports of field agents whose total option and total desire was to write a ticket for everything they saw. And then the ABIP came along to try to give stations a so-called protection from inspections. So I know you can only talk about yourself and maybe some folks that you know, but you say it's hogwash to say that they're going to expect everybody in a city if a complaint comes in. But can you talk about the attitude a little bit? Is that possible?
Well, I can say a couple of things. One is compliance is much cheaper than enforcement for everybody.
So all right, now I'll stop you right there, and I'm gonna dig a little bit, because inside you, the SBE comes out with this self-inspection report. You have to be a paying member of the SBE or the NAB to get one. Small stations are not going to be SBE members or NAB members. How are they going to deal? Because the only thing the FCC has put out is what, 2008?
If you're a broadcaster and you take your broadcasting authorization seriously, then you have to obey the rules, period. The rules are available to you. That's it.
Also, too, I can just say, at least for the LPFM stations, there is a free option available, and that's the REC compliance checklist, and that has been around for many years now. I saw the issue. I identified this issue where the compliance guides were, the self-inspection checklists that the agency put out were way out of date, and I published my own quite a few, several years ago. It's frequently updated. It's like a 5-page presentation, and there's even a paper that you could print out that you can actually walk around, put it on a clipboard, and do all the checks. And that's at recnet.com/checklist, and that's specifically for LPFM. And but that is freely available. You don't have to be an NAB or SBE member. And like I said, our checklist predates the NAB SBE publication.
Now, what was the Hollywood issue? Was that overpower?
Yeah, that was overpower, intentional overpower. And
Let's get back to that in a minute if we can, because I interrupted Lark and I really didn't want to do that, but please, if you have more to say.
I don't want to say much because I think the rules are published. They're
About
fair.
about the attitude of the inspectors, the field agencies, that if you can.
No, I can't. I cannot do that, Barry. You know better than to even ask me that. Good try, though.
Well, I know what your attitude is.
Barry,
Okay, the balance between helping the broadcasters stay in compliance and writing a ticket. Is the first thing you want to do going through the door, write a ticket, or do you want to solve a problem?
So Barry, I'm not going to answer that question because you know the answer.
Yes,
I'm
I
not
do.
going to grandstand. Everybody here knows the answer.
Okay.
So you know better than anybody. Look, I'm a broadcaster, 40 years. Chief engineer, lots of markets from Florida to California, and running premier radio networks. So most of you know me one way or the other. I'm trying to make this work for everybody. We're trying to make it work well. The rules are available and clear. If you sign up to be a broadcaster, you agree to all of your responsibilities as a broadcaster, including following the restrictions of the rules and meeting all the requirements of EAS. I think it speaks for itself.
Yes, it does. Absolutely.
Well, Barry, we had a guy in Boston who really did help. Ben Wapple, many years ago. And I would bet that in order to get a ticket, you'd have to be grossly in the wrong.
He signed my license back in the day.
No, he signed mine too.
I think too, with the very low volume of notices of violation that are out there, I have a feeling that, not everything, and Lark, you don't have to comment on this, that not everything is going to trigger at least an NOV. And I think things can be, if they're able to resolve the issue right there on the inspection, I don't know if those are even getting an NOV.
That's an excellent point. We send out warnings that are not public. And a lot of the enforcement efforts are documented in warnings, which are not public. I'll just leave it at that. It's an excellent point.
And that's really answers my question. And I truly apologize if you felt I was trying to push you too far. That's not my intention.
Oh, no, I love you to pieces, Barry. I'm just teasing with you.
I know. I know. And every time we have had a chat, I've learned something, and I've understood a little bit better what's going on and how to advise other folks who have questions. And I want to come back to your very first comment that just because you make a complaint to the commission on the portal, and you don't even have to, it can be anonymous, but if you do that, you're not risking a whole series of inspections in your town. And that's good.
And that's the word that's got to get out.
So here we are.